I would say where I've seen the faithfulness of God was when I was doing a Bible study in the morning of April 26th. I was working at a school at that time, so I was just doing my own study. I normally start my day with devotions. And I was working through just a series of my own in contentment and looking at what contentment is, because I was noticing a lack of contentment in my own life. The discontentment was coming from just not being where I wanted to be or where I thought I should be at that time, as well as not having what I thought I should have, which comes in the form of position in ministry. And this was also before I had gotten the actual acceptance from and the offer from North Park. And it also comes in just relational aspects as well, like desiring a relationship, wanting good friends, and being able to connect with other people, and not having those things at that time, but wanting to still say with Paul, as he was able to say, that he could be content in any circumstance. I was considering different passages that talk about contentment and what that looks like. And I was reading 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, which says, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." And one of the things that I've really come to enjoy is doing word studies on words that stand out. And so I was looking at the different kinds of words in that passage: rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in every circumstance, and noticed that both the words in Greek for rejoice and for thanksgiving are built off of the Greek word charis, which means grace, which is the grace of God. And as I was looking at that, it dawned on me how joy and thanksgiving are contingent on one another, and they're needed for each other to be upheld, to be held together and strengthened. And we find that joy and that continual thanksgiving only in the grace of God, because that's the only thing that lasts forever. And as I was thinking about that and writing down my thoughts, I just felt an immense weight of presence on my shoulders, something I really haven't felt before. And I see it as the weight of grace, just how heavy it was and how present God was in that moment. And I couldn't even speak. Like, I couldn't even articulate any thoughts to think about the immensity of what God was revealing to me in that. And it really just drove me to my knees. And all I could think was, thank you, because of what Christ has done, because that is the foremost gracious thing that God has ever done for us. And the thoughts I was writing when I was reflecting on this is that God didn't have to create the world, but he did. And he didn't have to create us in his image, but he did. And he didn't have to save us when we turned our backs on him, but he did. And those are only three of the vast amounts of evidence of the grace of God in our lives. And that's just, I look back on that moment and I see that as a time where a lot of the shame that I felt carried around from past decisions and actions was just washed away. And I was able to continue to look back at that moment and see that God's grace sustains, and it's always there, and it's always causing joy and thanksgiving. And there's going to be struggles still continually, a continual learning process. So as much as that moment washed away past shame, it also continues to give grace for future shame. Things that come along that stem from discontentment, that stem from a desire to have more, or a desire to be in a place that I'm not yet. And when I notice those things and see that coming up, I remember that moment and I think back to when God's grace really was very present, and remembering that that's still the case and it's still working and still moving. God is faithful, and I have seen it.